Crypto prices are in the green to start this week. Bitcoin rose above the $17,000 level. Ether traded higher as well, back above $1,300. And Solana soared a whopping 22%. That's all as of noon Eastern.
As we ring in the 2023 year, many are left to speculate what kind of dumpster fire market we've adopted from the previous year. On the bright side, it can't go too much lower. Right?
Okay, let's talk about some of the top stories. First, the SEC and the Department of Justice's Eastern District of New York are reportedly looking into transfers between Digital Currency Group and its Genesis subsidiary. Citing people familiar with the matter, Bloomberg reporting that prosecutors have requested interviews and documents from Genesis and DCG, and that the SEC also seems to be in the early stages of its own investigation. The report indicated that Genesis and DCG have not been accused of wrongdoing. We reached out to both agencies, and an SEC spokesperson told us that the commission, quote, does not comment on the existence or non-existence of a possible investigation. A spokesperson from the DOJ's Eastern District of New York said no comment. A Genesis spokesperson, meanwhile, told us, quote, while we do not comment on specific legal or regulatory matters, Genesis maintains regular dialogue and cooperates with relevant regulators and authorities when it receives inquiries. DCG told us that it has a, quote, strong culture of integrity and has always conducted its business lawfully. The group added that DCG has, quote, no knowledge of or reason to believe that there is an investigation into the company. The lending arm of Genesis was hit hard by FTX's sudden collapse and halted customer withdrawals. The freeze is still in place. DCG has reportedly said that it has not been impacted from the issues at Genesis. Next, the Robinhood shares linked to FTX and worth nearly $500 million have now been seized by the Department of Justice. That's according to this court document filed late on Friday. The DOJ confiscated more than 55 million shares owned by Sam Bankman-Fried and his FTX co-founder, Gary Wang, through a holding company, writing in court docs that, quote, the seized assets constitute property involved in violations of crimes including wire fraud and money laundering. SBF was charged last month with those crimes and others. He pleaded not guilty last week. Wang did plead guilty for his involvement and is cooperating with prosecutors. Last week, SBF argued that he should keep control of the Robinhood shares, disputing a claim by the bankrupt exchange he used to run. According to court filings, 3 parties have now tried to get control of those shares, including bankrupt crypto lender BlockFi, an FTX creditor, and Bankman-Fried himself, who indicated he wanted to use those shares to cover the cost of his legal bills. In this court document filed last month, FTX argued the shares should be frozen until they can be divvied up fairly among creditors. SBF rejected that idea in his filing late last week, arguing that he and Wang legitimately bought the stock using money borrowed from FTX's trading arm, Alameda Research. Last up, the FTX bankruptcy team in the U.S. has agreed to work with the liquidators in the Bahamas, where the crypto exchange was based. That's according to a joint statement put out on Friday, where the two sides said that they will work together to share information, secure property, and coordinate litigation against third parties. Competing bankruptcies were filed in the 2 regions, putting the bankruptcy team in the U.S. and Bahamian officials at odds since FTX's collapse in November. The development settles a disagreement that threatened the recovery of what could be billions of dollars in lost funds.
Everyone seems to understand that the FTX disaster will leave a mark on the crypto world. The question is how big of a mark? And is it permanent? And do you think it's going to need stitches?
Yeah, from a markets perspective, we followed up a 2019, a 2020, and a 2021, where it was basically up and to the right with a slow grind down. And it's sort of a sad thing to see, right? Everyone in crypto thought they were a genius. Anything you bought went up and to the right. But that's, sort of the tale that people tell for any market for the past, since 2016, probably. Equity markets have been in a bull market for a long time. Bitcoin and all other assets kind of followed the same thing. And this year it changed and interest rates started going up. People got a little skittish, started moving towards these less risky assets. Bitcoin and everything else was lumped in as a risk on asset. So it sort of made sense that there was a big sell-off. Not to mention there was a lot of noise from a regulatory perspective. Everyone knows about FTX. Everyone knows about what fewer people know about is probably 3 Arrows Capital and how that maybe was a predecessor towards a credit crypto wind down. And Yeah. The reason I say it's unfinished is because in 2021, and I mean every macro asset, so gold, S&P, bonds, US dollar, was kind of sitting in this little uncorrelated range between, the 0.2 and negative 0.2. And then this year happened and we saw the stories, right? Everything, the stock market was correlated to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is correlated to the stock market. If stocks went up, you could bet that Bitcoin is going up. Bitcoin's going up, stocks probably go up. The reason it's unfinished story is because we went from last year of, this is a big, great inflation hedge. Nothing's correlated to it. It's a macro asset like nothing else. And then now it kind of just looks like a stock. So it is an unfinished story because we're not quite sure which way it's going to go. Bitcoin is still a very young asset, right? It's hardly a teenager. What it ends up becoming 10 years down the road is really a mystery. And I think it's a really exciting thing to be a part of. Is it going to be, the global reserve currency, or is it going to be this, plaything? Bitcoin is, and this is a classic Bitcoin maximalist thing to say, which I am part of that camp. Bitcoin's a technology and is going to start changing, and there's going to be a lot of things that crop up in the next couple months. Is the Lightning Network going to be the thing that pushes Bitcoin forward, or is Bitcoin even a viable thing, right? Is it possible to have a base layer that only has 7 transactions per second? Maybe. I'm not quite sure. I'm not one to speculate on what price is going to do, but I know one thing is that Bitcoin is going to keep chugging along. TikTok, next block.